Good day, everyone. I hope you're having an amazing day. Welcome to another episode of Platform App Builder Certification Series. In our last episode, right, I talked about data modeling, where I talked about how to create a custom object using Schema Builder as well as using a normal wizard, right? So today we're going to talk about relationship like lookup relationship and master detail relationship, right? So before we dive into hands-on with relationships like lookup and master, you need to log into your org first, as usual. That's my opening statement, right? So once you have your org ready, right, it will take you to the setup. If you don't know how to go to setup, you can always go to this gearcog icon and it will take you to setup from there, right? Nice and easy. So we're going to work on the same object what we created last time, the Whisky Drinker object, if you remember. So we're gonna or a dummy object. So whatever object it is. So there's a custom object called Whisky Drinker here. So it's a very basic custom object, and if you look at the fields, we don't have much fields. It's all standard fields, and so what we're gonna do today, we're gonna create a relationship to a contact object, right? So now we're gonna work on the lookup relationship first. Lookup relationship is like a casual relationship, right? You can have one to many relationship, right? So what happens is that when you create a lookup, say to a contact, and when you create a record for this Whisky Drinker, right, you can make the lookup non-mandatory. Okay, let's do the hands-on, and I'll show you what I meant by that. So what we're gonna do first, we're gonna create a field, which is a lookup to contact, right? So we go to new here, and so we're gonna go to lookup relationship, and so I hope everyone knows how to create a field by now, right? So because we talked about it. I've been talking about it for ages, how to create a field, how to create a custom object, right? So this is one of the minimum requirement before you jump into the lookup relationship. Cool. Okay, so lookup relationship, you can read from here, creates a relationship that links this object to another object, which makes sense, right? So we are linking this Whisky Drinker to a contact object. So we can go here and go to next, right? And relate it to which object? Is you say contact. So we're gonna go to contact here, right? Go to next, and we're gonna keep the field name as contact, right? You need to pay special attention to the field name because this is an API name, because API name is very important. So if you're a platform developer, right, who use Apex code, then the field names is very important compared to the field label. Field label may or may not make a difference, right? So it's just for your user reader, just to give a meaningful name to the user. And help text. It's always good to put the help text. So this is a contact, because when the user hover over the mouse on a field, when they go and create a record, right? So it gives them a meaningful information about regarding the field. Otherwise, if you have, because I work on Salesforce, right, and we work on the ERP system. At times, I don't understand what the field is about, and it confuses me. So it's always I'm talking about the custom objects, right? So it makes sense, right? If you're creating a new field, please put a help text. It will help a user who is working on that object, right? Cool. It's a common good practice, what I would say. Okay, keep the default options. So if you want to make this field required, you can make it as mandatory, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to rely on the default option, right? Okay, and it's going to make it visible to all. Just keep it simple, and we're going to add this to layout, page layout. So click on next, and right. Okay, so we're gonna click on next, and we're going to click on next. We're going to keep the default option, right? We're not going to muck around much of the stuff here. So we've created a contact here, nice and easy. So you can see it appended with __C, right? So now what we're going to do, just to test this, we're going to go to contact here. Sorry, Whisky Drinker. It's a very basic custom object, you know, so I mean, it's not fancy, it's just to demonstrate what it's all about. Okay, so let's create new. And we just got one field, Whiskey Drinker name, so whatever you put, Jack Daniels, right? So contact. So this is a contact. You can see that this is not mandatory here in this case, right? I mean, of course, we didn't put a text to that required field, but I mean, it will let you have a lookup field being a non-mandatory field, if you know what I'm talking about, right? Okay, so let's add one. Okay, let's save it first, right? To say if it works, right? It works, no problem whatsoever, right? Okay, now another question is that, okay, let's say I wanted to make it as a tightly coupled relationship, right? Instead of loosely coupled, this is like a loosely coupled relationship. So that's where the master detail comes to picture of master slave, where if the master record is deleted, the child record will be deleted as well, right? So what we're going to do, right? So we're going to create a master detail relationship here. So watch out what happens when you try to convert this field from a lookup to master detail, right? You will see a difference here. Because it's important, you need to understand what happens, right? You might have a lookup relationship and a custom object, and the business requirement changes. And then someone will come to you and say, look, I want to convert this contact lookup relationship to a master relationship, right? And in that scenario, you need to know what happens, whether you can really convert, because you should never give answer to any requirement straight away. You need to go and investigate, right? You need to look at the data and see whether it's possible and what are the implication behind it, right? You need to pay attention to these things. Okay, so let's say a client comes to me, right, who uses this org and say, look, I wanted to convert this contact who's a lookup to master detail. Can you do that? And if I'm someone who never looked at the data and say, oh yeah, I can do that, right? All right, let's say I agreed, right? I'm going to convert it, right? Now, let's see whether we can convert it or not. That's where, you need to pay very, very close attention to your data. Okay, so go to Whisky Drinker object here, right? And okay, now we go to relationship. So the client wants us to convert from lookup to master detail, right? Because your business requirement changed. Fantastic. Go here, edit. Okay, change field type. Master detail. Now let's see. You might think, oh yeah, it should be possible. Okay, before we convert to master detail, I would highly encourage you to please read this instructions here, right? Relationship field is required on all detailed records, right? Pay attention to the first line. Relationship fields are required on all detailed records. So now, if you remember what we have done for a Whiskey Drinker record, we created a Whiskey Drinker record without a contact lookup. So do you think whether we could able to convert this field to master detail? If you say yes to it, then I'm sorry to say that you need to prepare more. Okay, all right. We'll find out, right? This is how we... Okay. All right, go next. Next. Save. You see? You cannot create a master detail relationship. The reason why, to create a master detail relationship, because when you make a field to a master detail relationship, that field become a required and mandatory field, right? So go back to your whiskey. Sorry, just a second. Okay, whiskey drinker object here, and let's change this record type to. Sorry, let's change the record here. Okay, just a second. Sometimes R can be very slow at times to work with. So, okay. All right. So what we're going to do, we're going to populate it with, what contact you wanted. Okay. Now we have a contact, right? Now, let's go back and try to convert this field to master detail relationship to see what happens, right? Okay. Go back here. We'll take you to edit object. And go to field relationship, okay, contact, edit, and change field type. Master detail relationship, we're gonna go next, next, save. Right, it worked, right? So that's why I mentioned to you when I talked about converting a field type, you need to pay very attention when you convert to field type. There will be a data loss, right? Imagine you are converting from a multiple pick list to a single pick list, right? You will lose the data. So you need to be very careful before you commit to any change, right? You need to understand the implication around data. It's because data is important. After all, end of the day, it's all about data. If you're going to muck around the data, right, then it's not really good, right? Client can sue you or saying, look, you screwed my data, right? It's very important. Pay attention to the data before you commit, before you make any commitment to, any client. You need to understand the data set very well, right? That's the core requirement. It's one of the things you need to know as a consultant. No matter you're a technical consultant or a functional consultant, you need to understand it very well. Cool. Okay. All right, so now we converted to master detail relationship, right? Nice and easy. Okay, let's go to Whisky Drinker object and let's see the difference here. Okay, so we're gonna go to Whisky Drinker. I just wanted to refresh it. Okay, and go to new. All right, you see the difference here? Now the contact has become mandatory here, right? In Lookup Relationship, you can get by not adding contact, but in master detail is tightly coupled. That's what I mentioned. It's a strict relationship. It's a tightly coupled relationship. So you need to pay very attention to that. And so you can say, I mean, I'm not a really whiskey drinker, so she was regular. I don't know. I'm a big fan of beer. I mean, you can talk to me about beer all day, but whiskey, not really my cup of tea, but so I don't really. Okay, so it doesn't matter. So what we're gonna do? So you're gonna. You know what I often do for tests, right? I go to setup and I log in as a different user because obviously if you're an admin, right, you need to make sure that other user can do this operation, right? So that's why I often prefer to go to go to users, and I'm gonna go to login as a test user. So I'm gonna go to Whiskey Drinkers. Okay, so I don't think so. We have an access here. That's fine. That's not a problem. So let me log out here. Okay, let's see if I can go back. So that user do not have access. That's fine. That's perfectly fine. I mean, you can always add access to that user. That's a test. Okay. I'm gonna use Mark. Okay. All right. So that's worked. So you can see that it's mandatory. You can't actually fiddle with as you can see the contact. you need to put the context. So if you say try to save it, right, it won't work. So now the other way around, right? Can you convert a master detail back to lookup, right? So we converted from one way to another. So let's go back to another way, right? Okay, so in our scenario, we have contact populated in all the cases because it's master detail, so it won't let you save without having a contact, right? Okay, so we're gonna go to edit object. So you need to understand these things very well because relationships are very important from an exam point of view. Even if you're not preparing for exam, for your daily usage, right? For your daily understanding when you work with an org, it's important to know about relationships, lookup relationship, master detail. So okay, let's go to edit and change field type, and you gotta go to lookup here, right? Go to none. So, yeah. Okay, let's save it, right? Just to see if it works. So it works, no problem at all, right? Because when you convert from a lookup to master detail, so the requirements are more stricter. When you convert from master to lookup, you can do that pretty easily, not much problem. So that's why I mentioned to you that you need to study the data. It's very important. Right, please don't commit to a change without understanding the data set, right? Like I give you a very simple example of a pick list, the multiple pick list. When converting to a single pick list, you will lose the data because if you have 5 data, you will so you need to pay attention to all those kind of stuffs, right? And then converting from one field type to another field type. So it's important. I mean, Salesforce gives you that option to do that, but you have to use it wisely, right? You need to understand what you're trying to achieve. That's all pretty much I wanted to talk about it. So we pretty much talked about data modeling. So we talked about custom object, we talked about standard object, we talked about schema builder, and then talked about lookup relationship, master detail relationship, right? So that's pretty much from a data modeling side. And then we have something we're going to talk about data import and data export. That's the next topic, which is very exciting, very simple at the same time, right? And there is a limitation with the out-of-box data import and data export tools. So we're going to talk about it in our next episode, right? Stay tuned. Thank you very much for attending. Greetings and adios from New Zealand. Bye-bye.